my name is Kyle Benzies. I'm a licensed mortgage broker here in BC, and today we're speaking with Asim Ali, also licensed mortgage broker through Dominion Lending.
Yes, sir.
I'm Ramin Hallaji, licensed mortgage broker here in BC.
Awesome. Historically, though, interest rates, they have been kind of going up and down and that sort of stuff. So current interest rates, do they scare you at all?
Yeah, for sure they scare me that, people who might have over-leveraged themselves. Mm-hmm. But for most people, remember, all these mortgages were stress tested. So, anybody complaining or thinking that their market will likely default, it hasn't done so up until this point because Bank of Canada has put some parameters in place. So, no, they don't scare me in that sort of sense. But, there was definitely a small percentage of people who over-leveraged them. So I really worry for them.
So basically, right now, some clients of yours, they have probably hit their trigger rate or trigger point. Have you had any sort of feedback from your clients about the trigger point or trigger rate being hit and how that might concern their financial situation?
Yeah, it's actually, banks have been very lenient. I thought that most banks will require re-amortizations of the loans when people reach their trigger points, but that's not the case. They're using different methods. So let's say somebody was paying a $3,000 per month payment 8 months ago, and with all the rate hikes, they should be paying $4,800. Somehow, the way they have asked people to pay, they haven't increased the payments up until that point, and we're seeing people paying still much less. So because they are trying to help Canadians go through this time frame. So yeah.
What do you think will happen come January if there's another interest rate hike? Because like right now, it has been manageable. Even for myself, I'm on variable, and it has been manageable. And I still think with this 0.5% or 50 basis points hike as of today, December 7th, it's still going to be manageable. But come January, what if it goes up another 0.25% or 25 basis points? Do you think that that's going to be concerning to some of your clients?
It could be concerning, absolutely. But I mean, if you've been able to ride the wave up until now, I think you'll ride that wave as well. And it is concerning from that perspective. But, at the end of the day, the Bank of Canada has a mandate to, sort of control inflation. So they're doing the best they can. And I think, we just all need to be prepared to weather this storm, whether it's 6, 12 months long, whatever the time frame. At some point, rates will start coming down.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ramin, for yourself, so you're not a homeowner currently. You have been in the past. What is your take on buying right now? Because you obviously want to enter the market right now, but I know that you've been holding off. What is the reason for that?
Just like Asim said, it's a perfect time for investors to cash in at these historically low prices. We're seeing the biggest rents, that we've seen in the last few decades right now. Yet, because of the high interest rates, home prices are down quite a bit. In some places, more than 20%.
So I assume that right now is probably the time that you're looking to buy as well, because
100%.
You've seen it's a buyer's market, right? This is the moment that you've been waiting for, saving up, getting ready to go, right? I do what I preach to everybody I'm working with. This time last year, a home that was 1.5 million was, requiring $300K down payment at a minimum, 20%. And sure, the rates were, in the low, 1.5 or so. Fixes were about 2%. But right now, even though the rates are much, much higher, you're seeing the same home in certain areas down to just over $1 million, which means if I'm going to get that home, not only I'm paying quite a bit of less land transfer tax and quite a bit of less down payment, from $300,000 to possibly $220K, but also my size of mortgage is way, way smaller. We're talking about an $800 to $900K mortgage versus a $1.2 million. So even with a higher mortgage rate, it doesn't necessarily mean my monthly payment is higher. And let's not forget, these rates, as Asim mentioned, they're temporary. They'll eventually calm down. is it going to go lower than or the same amount as during COVID time? I don't think so. But it's also not going to stay this high. So why not take advantage of this permanent discount we're seeing on these homes right now? I'm almost looking at the half full part of the glass, because I'm almost telling myself, in a way, I'm getting the home for free, because as much as I'm putting down for a down payment and all my closing costs, it's still less than, in certain cases, not all cases, but it's a lot of times it's less than the down payment I would have had to put, or the discount I'm getting on the house compared to last year. So, it's just, if you can afford this, tell yourself, I'm getting these huge discounts, 20-30% in certain cases. If you can enter the market now, take advantage and go for these rates, knowing that the prices eventually will adjust as they have in the previous 60 years, you're going to be a winner in my book.
I think, I will add to Ramin's point. The lowest rate mortgage does not mean the lowest cost mortgage, right? So, to answer your questions regarding the market and current rate environments, if you're paying less for a property today, you're putting a lesser down payment, your closing cost is much less, and therefore, you have additional cash flow sitting in your bank account to offset any cost there might be for the short term. Mm-hmm. Right? Your mortgage is not going to be there for the next year or two, but in fact, it's going to most likely remain on your home for next 20 to 30 years. So when you're looking at the cost you're paying, you have to look at the overall picture, and therefore, you have to look at what you're paying for the value of the home today, as well, which is much less than before.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that I'm getting nowadays as a licensed mortgage broker as well is, can you get me the best rate? Now, I'm fairly confident that you're not rate solution based, because rate does not dictate this being the best solution. So what would you answer if somebody said, I want the best rate? What would you say to that?
Yeah, everyone wants the best rate. I want the best rate too, but is the best rate the lowest cost mortgage? Right, I can get you the best rate, but if you break your term, you have to pay $50,000 in penalties, which if we look at data, most Canadians break their mortgage within 2 years or 2.5 years into the term. So you have to factor that in. I'd rather be paying $20 more per month, but have flexibility, or $50 more per month depending on the loan size, than just going for the lowest rate mortgage in the end.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I also, to add to that, is people will want to buy a home. They will want the lowest rate, but they will also want to maybe invest their funds in something else. But quite often I hear that they want to put the maximum down payment, or actually, we'll scrap all that. Well, let me go into another question.
Sure. I like the question.
Basically, my point is that sometimes people will want to put down more of a down payment, and they don't realize that those mortgage, to the best of my knowledge, is somewhat of the cheapest loan you will probably ever receive in your life. What do you say to that if somebody says, I want to put down 50% of a down payment on my mortgage?
By all means. I mean, if that's the only vehicle how to save money, then by all means put the additional down payment. But if you can do something with that additional 25% or 30% you're putting down towards your mortgage, let's say you can invest in a fund where you're getting a 10% yield, or you can invest in private mortgages, or you can invest into a rental purchase which can give you substantial high yields, then of course you're better off to reinvest that money. But if there's no use to it and it's going to collect dust in your bank account, then by all means put the additional down payment.
Okay. So if somebody gave you $1 million today with a stipulation that you must spend that on real estate, how would you utilize that money?
I will try to put down, I'll try to put down as little as possible and try to, leverage as much as possible and try to acquire probably somewhere around 5 to 6, 7 properties.
Wow. Okay, so rental properties.
Rental properties.
Okay, so and how many doors in the world of mortgages? They call it doors. How many doors or homes or properties do you currently own? Actually, no.
That's a secret I would never get.
No.
A lot. Okay.
I'm having a lot of people trying to find.
They're going to kidnap him tomorrow.
Okay, no, this is actually good for both of you. Asim, what do you think the real estate market will look like in 5 years?
I think we're going to have more, more condos, townhouse units, just the way, things are going. There's huge migration taking place in Canada, and a bulk of it is coming to BC. So I do see that, we're going to see more towers and more smaller units in the coming years. Yeah.
Nice. Ramin, how do you see the real estate market in 5 years?
Profitable as it always has been, and in limited supply.
Okay, so basically homeowners, they're going to be the ones that benefit from this.
100%. It's one of those things where in the Metro Vancouver, it's one of the, if I'm not mistaken, it's the only metro in all of North America that with the current rate of building, it's running out of land in 20 years. So, based on what Asim said, you've got the highest net migration inside of Canada happening in BC. It's just over 8%. And then you have, the government bringing in from outside of Canada over 400,000 immigrants. Out of those numbers, I don't have the exact stats, but even if 10% move to Metro Vancouver, which I gotta believe it's a higher number than that, that's 40,000 people per year at the minimum, just coming in from one certain source. Where are you seeing 40,000 homes being built? No,
not at all. Not even close. That number is not even close.
No, there's anybody buying right now. In 5 years, a couple of things are going to happen. One, rates probably are going to be lower. We don't know for sure.
That would definitely be the goal, right?
But whenever the rates go lower, the prices go higher. So if somebody gets into the market now, while the prices are low, 20-30% lower than what they would have been a year ago, the first thing we're going to see is that market correction. So they're going to have quite a bit more equity from when they started. Then on top of that, this is when the federal government is coming in and saying, look, we need to build faster. So if let's say you own a nice, decent sized detached home, and you're trying to put a couple of duplexes in there, process right now, it takes a long time. Depending on the city, it takes anywhere from 8 months to a year just to get the permits for that. With that time frame, we're going to see a lot of development happening faster, more, as Asim said, smaller units. So I think right now is the right time to get into the market, and I suggest getting detached properties if at all possible. Yeah,
for sure.
Because the chances of redevelopment are quite high. It doesn't matter where you are. Eventually they're running out of land, and if they're running out of land and they can't go outways, they have to go up. So buy as many detached properties as you can.
Absolutely.
It's my take on this.
Sounds good. Okay, let's jump into industry stuff. Okay, so this is a question that I'm sure a lot of people want to know. What is a common myth about mortgage brokering that a lot of people don't know?
Mortgage brokers always charge a fee. they don't realize we actually get paid by the banks a lot of times. There are fees to certain type of mortgages, but not all types of mortgages. So a lot of AAA mortgages, we can find them better terms and conditions and for no additional cost. The banks just pay us the same commission they pay their mobile mortgage specialist.
That's right. So basically for like a traditional mortgage, let's just say, you're employed, credit's good and that, where would that fall? Would IOU, the mortgage broker, something for that?
No, the bank will pay us just like they're going to pay their mobile mortgage specialist. They're going to pay us the same compensation. So there's no additional cost to you as a borrower.
Okay, so when would that fee come into play that you would be charging me? Because there is alternative lending, right, and private lending, and that has a fee. So how would that come into play? When would that actually pertain to the client?
Yeah, so if you are, if your file has some pickles and it's a difficult file, you have some credit challenges or there are self-employed income in play, then we might go to an alternative lender. So the only time we're going to charge you a fee if the lender is going to undercompensate us or not compensate at all because of the type of mortgage you have.
Okay, so it wouldn't just it'd be because, hey, you want to just make an extra buck on the deal. It's because you're not actually getting the compensation that you would with traditional like A lending.
Exactly. It's usually what I call it, a riskier mortgage from the bank's perspective or the lender's perspective, right? So they're essentially passing their risk back to you by, perhaps charging you slightly additional interest rates, and that's where the fees come into the picture from the brokers end as well.
Okay. What is a common myth about alternative lending, or also known as B lending, that you're aware of?
I think the biggest myth is that I hear from almost most of the clients that these are private lenders, right, Asim?
Yeah, that is the biggest myth. Actually, just to add to his point, people often think these are private lenders, but they are actually regulated by the same regulator which regulates banks. So there are banks who will offer products for clients who are self-employed, or have credit challenges or any other issues for slightly different cost.
So alternative lending is not a private lender.
No.
It's a bank.
Exactly.
It's just maybe a different program.
Right.
Because I know that some banks, they'll have an A side, for their sort of squeaky clean files, great credit, employment for at least 2 years, that sort of stuff.
Right.
And then you have a B side. So that's the same bank. It can be the same bank.
Exactly. It can be the same bank. So let's say, you're a bank and, your name is ABC. You can do A lending. You can do alternative lending. It just falls within the same you'll just be more flexible on the alternative side and you'll price it accordingly because of the risk the borrower is bringing to you. Okay. But at the same time, these are all banks. There are 6 charter banks in Canada. And then there's monoline bank lenders, we call them monoline banks, which sole purpose is just to do mortgages. They only do one thing, which are mortgages. And then, of course, we have credit unions, which also do the same thing as well. So within banks, sometimes they have alternative lenders.
Okay, so keeping on topic with A lending, B lending, so alternative lending, also private lending. So private lending, one of the myths that I'm aware of is that these are the loan sharks. These are the guys that are, in the alleys willing to give you money at 30, 40% interest. What would you say to that if a client came in and said, I want a mortgage, but you looked at their file and they were only qualifying for private lending? How would you explain it to the client that this is an okay thing?
Yeah, I mean, whatever the borrowers bring to us, we just provide them solutions based on that. I've never seen a 30, 40% mortgage. There might be a lender who exists in the market, but most of the lenders are not even close to that price point. So, we usually will see a 2-3 point difference between a bank and a private lender, and it's equity-based lending. Right, so let's assume you own a property, $3 million, you have a $500,000 any A lender mortgage, and you're looking to borrow $100K, but you're not currently working, or you're retired, or your credit is short, or you don't want to break your existing term. Mm-hmm. So how would you access that money? Right? The only way you can access that money is by doing equity lending. So, it's a temporary solution. Of course, it's not long term, but we tell the clients how you're going to get yourself out of it. Most of the times they're disposing the property when the market is back up, or they're going to have a co-signer, or they're going to improve their credit, or their term will be up. So, we pull them out of those mortgages at some point. So it's just a temporary solution, but it's not as costly as, some myths out there. It will be slightly different than it will be different than e-lending for sure, or alternatives lending, but it's not that much different.
For sure. So more.
Just to add to that, actually, a lot of the private lenders are called MICs. MICs are actually also regulated by BCFSA.
Okay.
So they adhere to the same rules and regulations that the other lenders are adhering to.
So these aren't back alley deals or anything like that?
Pretty much. There's some minute difference, but these are the regulator is the same, which regulates credit unions in BC.
Asim, if you could go back to when you first started as a mortgage broker, what would you do different?
I think I would like to put systems in place right from the get-go. One of them could be just putting in place a good CRM system, which took me a while. Long while. So part of the reason was my, career was a metric rise, as some would call it. So therefore, that sort of delayed the process. I was trying to get more files done on a given day, then focus on, putting systems in place at that moment. So I think I should have done that much earlier.
Okay, so basically, right, CRM system, maybe people in place right away and that sort of stuff.
100% having, underwriters right from the get-go, and just taking few chances early on.
Okay, excellent. Ramin, if you could go back to the start of your mortgage broker career, what is the advice that you would give yourself?
Pretty much what Asim said, as far as putting the right systems, right CRM systems in place. Started, putting our systems together a little bit differently, roughly about 6 months ago, I believe. And what we're able to achieve now is almost quadruple, using the same with the same amount of time.
Okay.
So we're just able to do so much more, and the level of service has gone up. So definitely, I think it's the system and possibly even hiring an assistant.
Yeah, I would add to that, content creation. I would add to that probably, putting in better, SEO, integrations, things of that nature as well.
Okay.
Right? I wish I had done them earlier. I'm sure, you guys can relate. Besides you, Kyle, being a tech guy, you're probably on top of it from day one. But yeah,
hire the right people and don't wear all the hats. I think that's one thing that I found is you try to wear everybody's hat, and you're almost taking 2 steps back by doing so, as opposed to hiring the right people, the CRM, like what you were saying, get that CRM in place. You're able to just be a lot more efficient. The client communication, everything just improves as a whole.
Yeah, so you have to play on your strengths, right? If your strengths are, sourcing of your business, or underwriting your business, or closing your business, right? Or putting teams in place, structures in place, systems in place. You have to play on your strengths, and the rest of the stuff, let people do what they're good at, right? Bring the right people on board and pass those sort of tasks to them. Don't try to be the end all be all that I can do every single task in my business. And most people struggle with that, right? Because they think there's nobody better to do everything than they can. And, the reality is that's not true. They just have to sometimes coach and train someone, but, it takes a little effort. But once that's done, that task is off your shoulder. You can do what you're good at.
So as a mortgage broker, what would you say your key strength is?
I think my key strength is, building relationships with referral partners. I would say my strength might be, doing the initial calls with clients, or jumping into situations where, things might get sticky, where a file is probably going sideways, or, underwriter has a very different question about, a condition, and I can jump in and sort of, get to the bottom of the problem and trying to solve that at that moment.
And Ramin, what would you say your key strengths are as a mortgage broker?
Certainly, I would say bringing in business and keeping up with the relationships with the clients, with the referral partners, with the lenders, underwriters. but also underwriting and placement of the files.
Placing of the file is huge,
it's
right?
huge.
Like if for some reason you decide that you want to hire a mortgage broker that doesn't know how to properly place the file, that can hurt you. That could hurt you.
100%.
And that's something that I think that a lot of people, they don't realize that proper placement of the file, that is the solution. Rather than getting the Band-Aid fix of, let's say, somebody wanting the lowest interest rate, that solution and proper placement of the file, I think, is actually one of the things that defines both you, Asim, and you, Ramin, is that you can properly place the file in a timely manner too.
Yeah. So I mean, if lending was just all about rates, pay me I'm willing to pay the current interest rates and get me $20 million in loans tomorrow. The reality is I can, right? I gotta go through the underwriting process and get approved for those loans. Mm-hmm. So one key factor then comes into the picture is underwriting. Who's working on your file, right? How much knowledge that person has about lender products. And there's close to 40 banks out there, right? Does he know them all? How well does he know them? What type of relationships he has with those lenders? So I think that sort of makes that, that's what makes a broker a good broker versus someone, who doesn't know much, right? So my point is, the lowest cost is not what is the only thing, people should be concerned about. It's actually getting approved at the same time.
Okay, so basically getting the right solution.
Right.
So that's a fantastic point that I think a lot of clients, referral partners, that they miss. Sometimes we get calls that will from referral partners and clients that they want, let's say, the lowest rate, and you are properly placing the file as a mortgage broker in the best interest of the client, yet they're so focused on something else. What would you say to that client if they wanted, let's say, the lowest rate, and that is not their solution?
Yeah,
that doesn't
so I mean,
fit well
if they want the lowest rate and I can get them that, no problem, no issues there. But if the lowest rate was the only thing people qualify on, then every single borrower in the country will be going to a specific lender at a given time who's providing that product. The reality is that bank probably doesn't do, and whichever that bank might be at that given stage in a year, it does not probably do more than less than 1% or 1% or 2-3% of Canadian mortgages, because the fact they don't qualify all the rest of the Canadians, right? So my point is, the lowest rate is not the way banks function. Most lenders are very competitive to each other, right? So on a $3,000 payment, if I'm paying $50 extra per month, that's a cost I want to save. But at the end of the day, which bank is willing to lend me that money? That's the most important question.
For sure. Okay, Asim, at what time of day do you get your best work done?
I think at the end of the day.
End of the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's funny.
Is that
Same here?
Yeah. And
why is that?
I mean, I wouldn't say the end of my work day.
Okay.
The end of the day. So
end of the day.
Yeah. So I mean, once I go home, I'll have dinner. Probably an hour later, 2 hours later, right before going bed, I'll take my get out
the laptop and start.
I'll get out my laptop and I'll start taking some notes from the day, and I'll start writing down some tasks for the day after or the week after.
Why do you think that is, though? Is that because you've had a chance to kind of settle down and that sort of stuff? Your mind's at a little ease, less 100%. Pressure?
I think there's no noise, there's no incoming phone calls, text messages, emails, so you can solely focus on one thing, and that is what you're going to do next.
Gotcha. That's good. How about for you, Ramin? What is the best, or what is the most productive time of the day for you?
It's funny because I have the most energy in the morning.
Okay.
But we get the most done in the afternoon, evening. Last night, what time did we hit submit on that one file?
Oh, geez, it was 11:30 at night. That was a solid 14-hour day.
I used to write my files at midnight. Of course, I'm blessed. I have a very amazing team now, and they do the same. But it's true. You get most things done right at the end of the day when there's nobody calling you. There's no noise.
Exactly.
And all you're focused is that file and that file only.
Absolutely. It's true. That was We were trying to get him before midnight. That was the goal. I like setting those goals. Like, we actually, Ramin and I, we set a midnight goal. We want it done by midnight. And I find that with anything, but in particular with mortgage brokering, especially when there's possibilities of interest rate hikes, that you need to set those timely goals. So it could be noon, it could be 2 p.m. Setting that goal and sticking to it, it's to your benefit and also your client's benefit.
Right. And I agree with that. Yeah, if you set goals in any business, but in our business, it's more crucial. You know why? Because everything has a timeline. There's a completion timeline. There's a subject rule deadline. So everything's got a timeline. If you don't submit your deal on a Friday evening, by the time you submit your deal, probably there's a few other deals on the go for that underwriter Monday morning. So they're going to go through their queue. By the time your deal might get picked up, it's another day, 2 days pass by, it's approved, you wrote the appraisal, well, now the subject rule deadline is looming and you have a lot of conditions pending. So setting that goals and getting them done right there and then is the way to go.
So as a mortgage broker, what do you do to keep the file on track? So let's just say you've prepared the file, you have all the documents collected from the client, you've now hit that submit button and it goes over to the lender or lenders. What do you do as the mortgage broker to keep it on track?
Yeah, so we have a very robust system. Every morning we'll do an office meeting. We'll go through the number of files we have pending with lenders. We will go through what stages they're at. If we need to call some lenders, we need to send them emails, whatever that might be, so we can get them be on top of it, so we can have answers for our clients. That's why sometimes we'll get approvals within 24 hours or less than 20 within the same day, because we will keep track of the file with the underwriter throughout the day and just asking her for feedback, providing her documents, and so forth and so on. So every morning we'll go through the number of files we had submitted the day before and what's happening to those, along with the pre-approvals which we have to give on that given day. And
so do all your follow-ups and that. I think that for me, that's one of the misconceptions that some clients have, is that you are simply pressing the submit button and you're walking away from it and hoping that the lender will say yes. And
I hope that was the case.
that would be nice, right?
I hope that was the case. I could do a lot more within those days, but the reality is no. There's a lot which goes back and forth. There's a lot of questions the lender may have because all they're looking at is paperwork, right? So they are trying to understand the deal. They're trying to understand the dynamics of the property, the down payment, all those sort of things. And that's where, you have to be on top of all those things. If you miss one piece of the puzzle, they won't lend money on that property. It's just as simple as that. So they have to be comfortable with all of the conditions before they can they'll agree to lending money on that property. Sometimes they'll give conditional approvals, but even those conditional approvals have conditions, so you have to meet every single one of those.
For sure. And that's another thing that I find, that sometimes people will say, I want my approval, but they don't realize that it's a conditional approval. So the bank will say, yes, we will loan you money so long as you fill these conditions. And I think that can be concerning to some clients, especially when they're looking to remove their subjects. And in order to actually have that done properly, there might be things like, let's say, appraisals, right? A property appraisal. They will need to go and get a licensed appraisal company that works with that lender to get an appraisal done to see what the actual value of the home is. They might be buying the place for $1 million, but if it's only worth $800,000, that can affect how much the bank will actually loan, right?
100%. For sure. So, a good broker would know what are the, pitfalls in that given file. Now, let's say, Kyle, you're doing my file, and I tell you I'm going to receive, gifted down payment from a family member. It's going to be about $100K, and it's coming in next month, and my completion is not in 6 months. You can safely say that you will probably advise me, as long as you provide me that the source of down payment, the deposit, and the gifted letter, I can go ahead and remove subjects. But if you think that, my money may or may not come right on time, more than likely you're going to tell me that, Asim, I don't want you to remove subjects. I'd rather I want you to get an extension on completion so you can be sure, or get an extension on your subject removal so we can be sure that there's no pitfalls. So that's what a good mortgage broker does. Looks at the file, understands the file, knows the pitfalls, and then advise the client accordingly.
Exactly. So ultimately, it still is the client's decision if they want to remove subjects.
It always is a client's decision. Okay. Yeah. They're the ones purchasing the property. You're not buying the property for them. Just like if I was buying the property, I will be making that determination based on the facts I've gathered. So it's ultimately the client's responsibility whether they want to go ahead remove subjects or not. I never tell anyone to buy properties. If they ask me, is it the right time to buy? I just share what I'm doing in that given market, right? Or what our clients are doing or how the market is based on my personal assessment. But I never would advise someone to go ahead and remove subjects, even if all conditions are met, just, and there's nothing to, because it's their decision whether they want to go ahead with the property, because that's the time they're forming a deposit. They're giving some of their money away, because now they're actually making a consideration towards that purchase. So it's their decision. I just let them know where the file is at, and then they decide what they want to do with it.
Okay, so basically you get the conditional approval, you get the conditions list, and then your team would go through the conditions list and help fulfill those conditions, right? So there might be back and forth, I guess, with the client that would maybe require them to provide some additional information, maybe proof of down payment or gifted funds, a letter of employment, that sort of stuff. So you'd fulfill all those conditions. Then once all the conditions have been met, would you get the green stamp of approval from the lender at that point?
Not really. It's the same approval. It just, now we can provide them something in writing. We can send them an email, all conditions have been met, and, that's their, green stamp that they can go ahead and remove subjects. But, and in the ideal world, Kyle, we try to get all the conditions out the door prior to subject removal. But remember, the delays are not usually on the lender's end or on the broker's end, unless it's a very quick subject removal. It's usually the delays are on the client's end.
For sure.
Right? Where they are delaying bank statements. You've asked for them 3 days ago, and they gave you some, but there were some missing pages. They have to go back, get those again, or download them again. So or they were waiting on their employment letter to be current dated, and that's taking a while because of HR delays. Right, so now you've gotten the employment letter on the day of subject removal, and you send it to the bank, but it was 12 in the afternoon, and the underwriter wasn't able to review it by the end of the day. So therefore, that condition was met. It's probably a formality at that point, but it still needs to be met.
In an ideal world, how can a client help themselves with getting their mortgage actually not just conditionally approved, but completely approved as quick as possible?
By complying with whatever the mortgage broker is asking them for right there and
so you're leading them in the right direction, but
100%.
They still need to help themselves.
Right. You have to look from this perspective. I know we all have jobs, we all have to run businesses, but you're making $1 million purchase. Right, so do you want to delay that process? You like the property, you finally found it, or this is a good investment purchase, and you've been doing research for 6 months. Why would you want to postpone providing any documents related to your loan? Even by a few hours, right? Unless there's some sort of an emergency situation, and you can't do that. But if I have to take half an hour from my work or a few hours on that given day, and I'm probably going to lose some revenue, but that might be worth saving my mortgage file. So I think people have to understand that, and sometimes we tell our clients that, hey, we know it's going to cost you half a day of work, but it's probably better off that you do and get us the documents we're looking for.
Okay, so basically if you say, the mortgage broker says, I need an appraisal of the property and we need it tomorrow, and you can get it done tomorrow, the client should action that. They should get it done tomorrow. Follow your lead, basically.
Right. In an appraisal situation, it may not apply because sometimes we can reach out the seller's agent, right? And they then communicate to the seller side. So the client may not have a sway in that. But I would say in terms of documentation, right? Some clients are not, even in this day and age, set up with, electronic banking. Or they have to get a draft for a gifted down payment from their brother, and they have to physically go collect it and deposit it in their account and give us the statement, right? So you don't want to delay that process. Be on top of it. As long as you're on top of it, we're going to be on top of it. We're going to make sure the moment that document comes in, whether that shows up at 7 p.m. or at 9 p.m., by 10-11, someone has reviewed that document and shipped it over to the lender, right? And asked them to review it as well. So the sooner you get it to us, the sooner we'll get it to the lender.
So if the client gets the list of your requests, go through the list, fulfill them right away. Chop, chop.
Exactly.
Okay. Sounds good. Ramin, why is it not in the borrower's best interest to go to multiple mortgage brokers or banks and have them working on their behalf simultaneously?
There are lots of reasons.
I can kind of see why sometimes you would go to a couple of different banks and do that. But when the moment there is a mortgage broker involved, there is really no point. We already work with so many different banks. We can see all these programs, all these different rates, and at the end of the day, many more solutions. So, when we have all that and we can do rate shopping for you, program shopping for you, there's a lot of time and resources, not just from a broker's side, but also from the lender's side, just to review the file. I've heard it's somewhere around $1,200 for most lenders just to get the file reviewed properly and give you a commitment. So at the end of the day, if you go to bank A, get that commitment, and go to bank B and get that commitment, and then go to one broker and get him to send it to one bank and get a commitment, and then go to another broker, the first thing that's happened, now your credit is looking pretty bad, because every place you've gone,
they're all pulling your credit, right?
They're all pulling your credit. Now, the nice thing with us brokers is that we pull your credit once. And we can send that same file, to either this bank or that bank or that bank. We don't have to pull your credit multiple times. But it's the same concept as working with one realtor versus working with multiple realtors. It's just, it doesn't make sense if you're looking for the best solution. The moment you're working with a mortgage broker, that's what we're here to do. We'll do the shopping. And Asim, you can.
So basically, from what I gather, you fall in love with the personality. So the mortgage broker, maybe their awards and whatnot. And
ask me the same question.
Okay. Asim, why is it not to the borrower's advantage to hire or engage with multiple mortgage brokers at the exact same time?
Yeah, various reasons. So number one, every broker is going to check your credit. Number two, every broker works for pretty much the same banks at the end of the day. So by going to multiple lenders, if we can get some rate discretions, that ain't happening. The bank knows you're a rate shopper, so you're wasting their time and you're going to multiple people for the same file. And number three, we all package files differently. You may not know, but your file might have some hiccups. Maybe your year-to-date income is low. Maybe on that particular pay stub you worked less hours. Maybe you got a salary increase. Maybe there's some credit challenges. So remember, along with the file, we also draw a lot of notes. Now, my notes might look different than yours. And an underwriter looking at it might be thinking, they told a different story to this guy versus a different story to the other. The reality is that might not be the case. That's just what their interpretation may look like. So it hurts your chances actually getting an approval. And again, like I said, we all work for the same bank. So if you think you're getting any benefit by working with another mortgage broker, you're not. And if you're working with a mobile mortgage specialist at a bank, you're just working with that bank individual, and that's it only.
Okay, so basically if you were to go to, let's say, Billy Bob, the mortgage broker that has been in the industry for 2 months, doesn't know what he's doing, packages it in a fashion that is not working to the client's benefit, and then they submit it to ABC lender, and then you submit it to ABC lender because that client is also working with you. If the first guy has botched it and packaged this improperly, it actually hurts the client. There's 100%. A possibility that they're not going to get any sort of mortgage.
If there's a decline on it already, the bank's no longer even willing to look at the deal. If they haven't declined it yet, and both lenders submitted the deals, one before the other, they're going to review both files side by side to see if they can find any discrepancies. And it doesn't mean that there are, but it's just the way one has packaged the file and told the story versus someone else trying to elaborate the same story, right? So we've seen this often. It hurts your chances of getting an approval. It's not going to get you the best rates. The lender is not going to be happy about it. It's just like you run any business, and let's say it's the same borrower. or it's the same guy who's trying to shop, but he's trying to shop the same product, one by himself and one he's sending his friend, the owner is going to look at it and be like, no. Even if they were going to give you some discount for loyalty, here they won't, right? So people don't save money. They actually end up paying a higher cost and thus, hurting their chances of an approval.
So what would you say to a client if they came in and they were transparent with you and they said, I'm working with 3 other mortgage brokers and 2 banks? What would you say to them?
I just simply tell them, you know what? You don't have to work with us. That's perfectly fine. Just work with the one you trust the most.
Okay.
This is a risk-based industry. They're, saving clients cost is in our best interest, right? Imagine that client going back to his work and telling all of his colleagues what rate he was able to score, right? And if his rate better being, if his approval or his process being better than their process, and his terms and conditions are better, how much business are we going to receive from that point on, right? So it's a service-based industry. A good mortgage broker is going to do what's best for the client.
And that's one thing that recently I had a client of my own as a mortgage broker that they came in, they said, hey, just so you know, I'm going to consult a few other mortgage brokers. And I simply said to them, I would love to work with you. At the end of the day, I know that I can get the job done. When you've made the decision that you want to engage with me and my services, please come and let me know. Because you wouldn't go to, let's say, 2 realtors and have them both showing you properties, maybe even the identical properties. With regards to mortgage brokering, you actually would be dealing with, let's say, the same lenders. So it's a pretty good comparison. So to the point, when I said that, the client was actually very interested in engaging with me, that I wasn't desperate for the business.
100%. Yeah, you let them know. They can do whatever they want at the end of the day. They gotta pick the way to do this business is it's only a limited number of banks you can go to get financing done. So if we're both taking the file there, or 4 people are taking the same file to the same lenders, it's counterproductive. It's hurting their chances of an approval. It's damaging their credit bureaus, and they're not getting any rate discretions at that point. So you let them know who they trust the most, whether that be you or someone else. And they got to make that decision themselves and then act upon their decision. But working with multiple brokers is not an efficient way of doing business, and we've seen this. I said this earlier, we've seen it more often than not that people actually hurt their files more than they help them.
Because just like you said, you package the file in such a way via your submission notes to the lender that actually works to the client's favor. It's not like you're doing any loosey-goosey stuff. You're just you're painting the clearest picture of why they should be eligible to get those funds.
So people often assume that, if they have a higher rate mortgage, brokers often get paid more. That's not the reality. We tell all our clients that our Form 10s describe how we're paid, how much we're paid. It's usually based on the loan size with most lenders out there. So we try to place them with the best lender where their mortgage can be approved, and most lenders pretty much pay the same amount of compensation. So we're not, and it's counterproductive, for them too. If, like I said, if we could even get some rate discretion for them, now the lender's not budging anymore because they're seeing the same file from 2 different ends, so and they know this client is a rate shopper.
So wasting their time, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so basically deal with one mortgage broker is what I gauged. Deal with one mortgage broker. Ramin, have you run into that situation where you have somebody that's working with multiple mortgage brokers? I know that at some point you probably encounter that. How did you feel?
Yeah, I think every broker has. We try to usually have these conversations at our initial conversations. But sometimes it's not disclosed, or you find out later, in the process. And again, it's one of those things where it's really important. We're here to get the file done at the end of the day. And, if the client themselves are throwing hurdles in there without knowing that this is hurting their file or making our job harder, a lot of times a simple conversation will fix the issue. But sometimes it doesn't. And at that point, to have multiple lenders approve the same file, it actually hurts the brokers as well. It hurts our funding ratios. Funding ratios are when, let's say lender A approves 10 files. And remember, they spend a lot of time, resources, and money to get it to that point. And eventually, let's say you only fund 7 of them, 6 of them. It may get to a point where you're getting a lot more approvals than you're funding. And maybe they think that you, as a broker, have the intention of just sending them and 5 other lenders the exact same file at the same time, when in reality that was not the case. So it's a fine line where not only we're trying to have the best solution for the client and make sure that it's done without any hurdles, but also we have to make sure we don't get kicked out from that particular lender.
For sure. So it's your reputation.
It's everything. It's a little bit of everything, and of course, commission is not what we're looking at when we take over a file. But as mortgage brokers, we only get paid when we finish a file. So we could be doing all the work, and if the client, without telling us, was doing the same file with 3 other guys, and only went ahead with 1 file from the 4 approved files, well, 3 other people just
they wasted their time.
Wasted a lot. They wasted their time, resources,
took away time for family, other clients. Exactly, right. So
and I always say, if I'm spending time on this file, it means I'm not spending time on all these other files. A lot of our clients are very, very loyal, very, very good clients, and it hurts us when we're not spending time on their file, and then the file that we're spending time on actually doesn't get funded because of a reasoning like that. So it's really important, right? To make sure.
I agree. Yeah, just like Kyle said, it's super important to for us to fund those deals, but at the same time, it's even more important for that borrower who's just looking to buy that one specific property in their lifetime, or within it's their first property or second, an investment purchase. It's also very counterproductive for them as well.
Okay, for sure. I've heard in the news, in the chatter, that you have recently achieved a certain accomplishment as a mortgage broker. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I heard it's something to do with number 1.
Yeah, are you saying that I was number 1 in DLC across the country?
I'm not saying it. You're saying it.
Okay, well, fair enough. So yes.
Number 1 through Dominion, so DLC, Dominion Lending in the entire country.
Hey, just remember, we are on, today's December 9th. There's still stats, there's still numbers to come, so I could fall off.
Okay.
But up until that today's date, yes, I'm number 1 of all across.
What do you think what do you think allowed you to get to that? Because that's not just given to you; that's clearly earned. What do you think that you did that was different?
Yeah, so I think consistency, being persistent. I think I hammered these points quite a bit on a daily basis. We just keep repeating what we did the day before. We challenge. I don't look at anyone else's number. I do, but to be honest, I compete with my own numbers from a month before, from a year before, and just try to do things differently, right? But be persistent. I show up to office 5 days per week, constantly. Yes, some days I might be coming in a bit late, but then I end up staying late. So that sort of consistency pays huge dividends over the years.
I think he's just giving some of the answers. You know what? As a person who started my career beside him, I actually met Asim a year before I officially got licensed, and I can tell you he's different. He's not like anybody I've ever met. How he goes about his business is light years ahead of if a new broker even did half of the things that Asim has done, they'd probably be in the top 75 within the first couple of years. I've never met anybody more driven, and engaged in his business than Asim. It's Asim, how long did it take you to get to 100 million in the industry?
Second year. I was there by second year, but yeah.
Okay,
it's like,
that's pretty dang good.
That's,
exactly what Ramin is saying. Honestly, it's not. And he has the same. He's exactly just like me, or better than me. To be honest with you, he has the same level of persistence. I think he has even more, and the consistency, right? And if you show up and you're in your office, well, what are you going to do? You're going to hammer some business. You're going to find ways, carve ways, to do more than what you've done yesterday, right? So I think we compete with our own numbers. I do that all the time. I look at my previous year numbers, previous month numbers, and I'm just trying to outperform myself. That's all we're trying to do. So is everyone on my team. They're trying to do the same thing. I don't put them against each other, against other underwriters in the country or other, mortgage brokers. We're trying to be more efficient than the month before, the year before. And I think that's very, simply put, but that's the reality how we do our business.
One of the things that I found coming on board the Royalty Financial team is that you care. It's not just about getting the file done and just making sure that they get funded. There's a level of empathy that you show towards every file, and I think that really matters, not just for the client and you showing the care and them feeling that trust, but on top of that, it allows you to better understand and create their mortgage story for the lender to understand what is actually going on.
Right.
And unless you actually put that time into it, I think that it just, if that time isn't put into it, that empathy, that care that you put into it, I think that there's chances that some files, they wouldn't get properly placed, or that they would maybe not get approved.
I might get overlooked. And I agree with you. Most of our database is actually, driven with care. Most of our clients are driven with care. We actually care, even after the file is funded, we stay in touch with our client just to see how they're doing, if they have any questions, whatever that might be, even just, saying hello to them and, just seeing, how life is going for them. So I think that sort of, mindset we have within our office, within our, brokers, and that's why they're so successful at the end of the day, because we bring in a different element than most banks out there, where they go get their mortgage done and they never hear it again unless the bank wants them to convert them into a fixed rate or it's time for renewal, right? Whereas we will pick up the phone and place those phone calls, not have automated emails go through, because we feel like, these are clients, these are our referral partners, these are people, and we just want to learn about them and, get to know them a bit more. And I think the same goes, and they in return, just somehow find that, a different touch, and they feel like, they are our lifelong clients, and they'll tell us that, hey, we're going to be staying with you for the rest of our life. Whether that happen or don't has yet to be seen, but we do see that up until today's date, that all these clients will keep coming back to us for their investment purchases, all because they love the environment, essentially,
For sure. So that actually touches on a point, because you've made it very clear in our entire team that you need to be ethical 100% of the time. There's no room for messing up on being ethical. So what does that mean to you, being ethical? Why would a client care that you are an ethical mortgage broker?
Oh, people care. People care 100%. If people think you're shady, then they look up to you. They don't respect you. They might do business with you, but do they respect you? Right? They might do that one transaction with you, but they don't look up to you, and when we don't respect people, do we respect them enough to continuously keep doing business? Not really. We just want to a one and done sort of transaction. And so I think being proud of what you do, being ethical, and not just for yourself, so you can sleep well at night, and be in this business in the long run, but at the same time, your clients care about these things. So you got to remember that part, right? Because they'll be looking up to you, or they'll be looking down to you. So it's on you at the end of the day how you want yourself to be viewed by your clients.
For sure. And that's one of the things that when I think Asim Ali, I think trust and respect. And it's been earned. Trust, well, you've been able to be ethical. You've been able to show the client that you care, that empathy and whatnot. Everything that you've done has earned the trust and respect that I think that you need as a mortgage broker if you want to have history in the business.
100%. If you want to get to the top, if you're just living through and you're trying to survive through and you're trying to compensate your lack of skills, lack of knowledge, and you want to go into, these shortcuts, by all means, be my guest and do whatever you feel is best for your business. And, but I like to sleep well at night. I like to build a solid base, solid relationship with my clients, and I think I can only do that by caring for them, caring for myself, and respecting them and have them respecting me back as well. So it's really important for any mortgage broker, to be honest, right? You don't but unfortunately, there are some bad apples just in any industry, and mortgage broking is one of them. So they taint our picture essentially for all of us sometimes.
I want to touch on that. Being ethical actually has helped us get more approvals and bring more business.
From the lender standpoint, like the lenders want to work with you?
Both. Like we've, every now and then you have that one file that's right at the border of lender discretion.
Okay.
Is it going to get approved? Do I trust the broker enough to grant this exception?
So basically know your client, like you've done your due diligence, finding out.
100%.
Okay.
And I think, sorry, I'm interjecting, but what Ramin is saying, banks will make a lot more exceptions for brokers they trust.
Yes.
They will lend out a lot more money to borrowers because of the brokers they trust than someone whose files, even they got approved but got picked up by audit post-funding and they found some stuff. So my point is, the more ethical you are, the more upfront you are, you would be surprised the amount of exceptions you can get. We have clients come in.
Lender exceptions, to be
lender
clear.
exceptions, bank exceptions, 100%.
So the bank basically has a list of what they're looking for on a file, but they'll actually stray outside of that a little bit if it actually makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example, right? If you're working for a family member, let's say your brother, sister, they're related to you. So most banks will say, well, we'll use the income. If you've been working with them for 2 years, show us the T1 journals, notice of assessments, and T4, so we know this income was filed and we use the average of that. How many times we've got an exception by disclosing that up front, that, hey, this guy was working for his brother for a year and a half, but, or only a year or 6 months, and the bank will say, okay, fair enough, give us 6 months bank statement and, payroll deposits, sometimes even as far as just going back 3 months.
Wow.
Right? So we've been able to get those exceptions all day long. That's never been an issue. But most people will try to camouflage that, or, they won't disclose it to us, but we have ways to figure that out.
So that comes down to you as the broker, though. They're trusting you, and that you are actually not maybe lying for the client and that sort of stuff, that you believe in the file, so therefore they're willing to look into it further and possibly believe in it as well.
Absolutely. Sometimes our clients, most of our clients will be very straightforward, will disclose that information. There's the oddball who will just tell us that they're working somewhere, and we'll figure out that it's a family member. We'll ask them about that, and we will actually put them back on track. We'll tell them, if we don't disclose this information, and the bank's going to find out, this is what they do for a living all day long, and actually you're going to get, turned down for non-disclosure, and at the same time you're going to be flagged. So no other lender is going to provide you a mortgage. So how about we disclose it, we tell them the truth, we give them the documents, and we ask for an exception. We've done that many times. Many times banks have accepted those exceptions, and we do those mortgages all day long. This is just one example of many exceptions we get on a daily basis on multiple files, just by disclosing more than less.
Okay. So
Right.
basically lender relations, the trust, that's
Is
imperative
important.
for the client's success as well.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if I know that you've been honest about, why you want to borrow this money, even though I might feel like that, you could be a slightly riskier borrower, I'm more comfortable lending you the money because you've been able to establish that trust. Now, imagine me learning that you're camouflaging something or you're trying to hide something from me and you're trying to borrow that money from me, even though you might seem like a AAA borrower for any lender out there, they're not going to give you money. They're right away, they're going to turn you down and they're going to flag you, in their internal system, which all of them share.
Asim, how long have you been in the industry?
Kyle, long enough. I've never given that answer, so you're not getting it either. You do know the answer, though, knowing me, but I'm not going to tell you on camera.
You're well versed.
Yeah, put it that way. I think the years don't matter.
Okay.
And I learned that very quickly as I started in the business. You could meet someone who probably sell 10 homes in a year, and he's been in industry for 20 years. So he sold 200 homes in 20 years.
Okay.
But what about the guy I just met who sold 200 homes in the last 6 months? Who's ahead of the curve?
Exactly.
Right? So the number of years don't really matter that much, to be honest with you.
Okay, so basically the fact that you have been in the industry for, are you going to say the number?
No.
No, okay. The fact that you've been in the industry for whatever amount of years, it doesn't matter. It's about what you know, who you know, how you do your business.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. It's a size, scope, exposure you had, which matters the most. Numbers, just numbers, and honestly, they're just numbers.
Asim, who has been your most important professional mentor?
I didn't have one when I started my career. I didn't have when I started my mortgage brokering career as well. But I think probably 8-9 months into it, I was able to meet with the owner of Dominion Lending Centers, also the owner of Mortgage Architects and Mortgage Center. I think I talk about him. His name is Gary Morris quite a bit. I think he's been my only mentor.
Okay.
I don't have 3, it's only 1.
Just one. Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you say the main thing that you've learned from Gary Morris? What would be the main thing that you've learned that you have now adapted into your current business?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, team building, setting up team building, how to treat employees, how to pay them, from the perspective of what type of business model do you want to have, what type of business you should have, the amount of numbers of hours you want to work. He, taught me if you can't get away from your business for 3 weeks and enjoy your time and your business functions just the way it was when you were there, you don't have a business, right? So that sort of things which really helped me. How can I get to that? I don't want to be a manager, but I want to be a business owner. So I think those sort of things. And this guy is full of information, right? Remember, when you talk to hundreds and thousands of mortgage brokers across the country, you've learned quite a bit, right, over the years. So he's full of information. Anyone you want to chat with him, but anyways, he's taught me quite a bit.
Awesome. So we'll be at his place for high tea in no time, I'm assuming.
I can text him. We can go now.
Let's do it. Ramin, who's been your most important professional mentor?
Right to my right.
Asim Ali.
Wow.
100%. 100%. For the first 6 months, I came to this office and
I'm blushing, by the way.
Every day I was here, I would sometimes I would just go to his office and listen to his phone calls, and we wouldn't even talk. And you know what? Just seeing him and what he's done made me want to do better every day. If I had a roadblock, I would call him and he would drop everything that he's doing and get right to the question and try to find a solution, no matter how long it took. A great person, a great mentor. He's the full package. Definitely has had the most impact. As I said, even before I got started, because I remember coming in here a year before getting licensed, and the first thing I noticed was the plaques on the wall.
It's quite a few of them, isn't there?
So many. But, you know, I remember the one thing that caught my eye was top 25 at the time. It's like, I thought we had thousands and thousands of brokers, and he's top 25? Wow, I hope he hires me. That's the first thing that went to my head. And that's the truth.
Yeah, when the truth is, when I spoke with him, you know, and I chatted with a lot of brokers throughout my, you know, short career, but when I spoke with him, he stood out, right? Just like you too, Kyle. You stood out. We were doing this podcast. You know, how many brokers I've done the podcast with? Not so many, just, you know, with my own team up until this point. So that should tell you guys a lot, that how much I look up to you guys as well.
Oh, definitely. I appreciate it. And, you know, that's one of the things that I found is you're always willing to bring up our morale. We're team members. We're not just that other broker that is under a CMLE. No, we are part of Royalty Financial, Dominion Lending, and you boost us every day. I found that
I actually even boost my team members, just so you know. I want to make the change in their lives. I think I have to a certain extent, and I want them to do better. You know, we do investments together. We do things together. It's just the way life goes. You know, I can do So, you know, if I'm growing, everybody should be growing who's with me. You know, that's the way I look at it.
For sure. And one thing that I joked around with a while back is that, you know, how would you feel if I became, let's say, number one through Dominion Lending, and you weren't concerned? And that was something that was quite interesting, is that you were willing to light my fire to get there. You were encouraging me to focus on trying to get there. And I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, imagine, you know, me looking up to someone who I was fortunate enough to spend some time and coach and train a little bit, right? That sort of, you know, you don't get that, you know, that sort of achievement, you know, I would take that any given day, right? Someone beating my numbers and proving to me that they have excelled, they have done better than I have, you know, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm going to be proud as much as they are. So, you know, I strive for that sort of, you know, energy and that sort of people. And again, there's no doubt in my mind that you guys are going to do that, by the way.
Well, it's a great satisfaction, right? Seeing somebody 100%. Doing well that you know.
100%.
Well, I'm at 421 apparently. As of October stats, I'm 421. That's not bad, right? Yeah. I'm getting there. I have short time in the industry, but still, that doesn't really matter. If you're willing to actually devote your time to understanding the industry, no Netflix, going and actually understanding the industry and devoting your all into it, doesn't really matter. So I'm not shy to say I've been in the industry for roughly 9 years. 9 months rather, and I'm totally comfortable with that because I know that I'm going above and beyond to be 10 years above people that have already been in the industry for 10 years.
Right.
So,
you know, a lot of us could say, or some of us, or some people in this world could say, well, they could retire tomorrow. You got to think, why do they show up at work the next morning, right? They can just live off their investments. It's the drive, the passion. They want others to grow. You know, it's not the money anymore, right? The money can be earned in various ways, various forms, even perhaps more. They're more passionate about their industry than actually the money. Yeah, they understand money is a byproduct of their success, but like I said, they have it already to a certain amount, and they can invest that in better vehicles. They can do better with their time, but they still keep on doing what they were doing yesterday. And that's because of the passion they have, right? And it's the passion is not only for themselves, but it's usually for people who they're surrounded with as well. They want, you know, they've achieved a certain level in their career. There's not a whole lot more they can do rather than maintain that level. But how about helping some others to be at that level or be better than them, right? So, you know, that's a great achievement within an achievement.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for always lighting our fire. It's definitely appreciated, and it keeps us going.